All right, now let me show you how to replace this navigation with a modal box. So if I click an item, you see our item details page appears from the bottom of the screen. Let me show you one more time. So click, see, it pops up from the bottom of the screen. Now with a modal box, we enforce the user to take an action. And unlike the navigation stack, we don't have the default back button. So here I have explicitly implemented the cancel and done buttons. Now here on Ionic website, let's have a quick look at the documentation for modals. You can find this under components. Now let's scroll down. So here's the basic usage. We import modal controller from Ionic-Angular. So you can see a common pattern here. Most of the components in Ionic have the controller suffix in their name. We import a component from Ionic-Angular, then we inject it in the constructor, and finally we use it somewhere in our component. So back in VS Code, in home component, I want to replace our navigation with a modal box. So on the top, I'm going to import modal controller. Then I'm going to inject it in the constructor. So private modal CTRL, that's the common naming convention. It's shorter than controller. And its type is modal controller. And finally, in select item, I'm going to delete this and call this .modal controller.create. We pass the target page, which is item details page. And optionally, as the second argument, we can pass an object that includes any additional data for the target page. So just like before, item, and we set this to the item argument that we get in the select method. Now this create is a factory method, so it creates a modal object. And then we need to call the present method. Let's look at the result. All right, so I'm going to click on item. Here's our modal. Now let me show you how to add a cancel and an OK button on top of this page. So we go to item details.html. Here inside ion-navbar, I'm going to add ion-buttons. So we can add one or more buttons inside this element. I'm going to add one button here. Add the attribute ion-button, which is compulsory in Ionic. So whenever you want to add a button, you should add ion-button attribute. And I'm going to call this cancel. Now to position this on the left side of the page, before the title, I'm going to apply the start attribute on ion-buttons. Now let's handle the click event. So we simply call the cancel method. Now one more time. After ion-title, we add ion-buttons. Now this time, I'm going to apply the end attribute. So all the buttons I put here, in this case just one button, will appear on the right side of the page. And then to save time, I'm simply going to copy this button and paste it here. Let's change the name of the handler to done and the label to done as well. And finally, let's go back to item details component and implement these methods. So cancel and done. Now in both these methods, we want to hide the dialog. Because unlike navigations, we don't have a back button, so the user has to explicitly click a button to close the modal. How do we close it? First, we go on top of the page. We import view controller from Ionic-Angular. We use this class to get access to the currently open page. And then, just like before, we're going to inject this in the constructor. So private view CTRL of type view controller. Now, why did I apply the private modifier here? Because I'm going to use this object in other methods in this class, like the cancel and done methods. Okay, and then here, to close the dialog, we call this .viewControl.dismiss. And I'm going to copy this line and paste it in done method as well. Now in a real world application, inside the done method, we probably want to save the changes. So we can either use the HTTP service of Angular to call a RESTful API on the server, or if we're using Firebase, we can use Angular Fire object, get a reference to a node in the database, and update that node. You already know how to do this, so I'm not going to repeat it in this video. Now let's take a look at the result. So click. Okay, we have a cancel and a done button here. And clicking either of these buttons will make the modal go away. Next, we're going to take a look at icons in Ionic.